Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's performance of Go Get My Mom by Erik Beringer. Please take a moment to locate the nearest exit and turn on all devices. Feel free to text, FaceTime, or check your social media for when you inevitably get bored. Erik would like to take this time to thank faculty for their fundamental lack of foresight, and he apologizes in advance for anything that can and will go wrong tonight. Tonight's production cannot begin until all patrons have received a playbill. If you do not have one at this time, please raise your hand and our clown slaves will provide one for you. Now sit back, relax, and please welcome to the stage, John.
People tell teenagers that they think they're invincible. And in my experience, that wasn't true. I was very cautious as a teenager. But I can tell you that I spent every goddamn day since finishing college learning that a 4-year college degree does not render you impervious to physical harm. Which is an easy way to say that I wasted 4 years of my life. Last month, I burnt my thumb very badly playing with fireworks in a drainage tunnel in Tinleytown. And just last night, I burnt my index finger lighting off a makeshift flamethrower I made out of a spray paint can and a lighter trespassing in the woods in Arlington, Virginia. It's been a weird year for me. The first thing I did this year was make 4 New Year's resolutions, and I kept 3 of them, which is pretty good. 75% is a C. One of my New Year's resolutions was that in the year 2016 I wasn't going to shit my pants. February 10th. I woke up, and in a haste to get any protein in my day, I ate 4 handfuls of hummus with my hand and drank an entire cup of black coffee and then ran 2.5 miles to campus to take a class taught by a man who worked for the FBI for 30 years. And he did not notice that there was shit in my pants the whole time. It's been a really weird year for me. Earlier this year, a friend of mine's older sister in casual conversation forgot my name and described me as, you know, that guy, your sad friend who used to be fat. That's maybe the second least flattering way I've ever been described, but it's perhaps the most accurate. So I'm willing to discuss it on stage, because she's right, I did used to be fat. And I just like to say, for any fat dudes in the audience, if you're really confused, you're wondering why you're not getting laid, you're wondering if it's because you're fat, or because you're sad, or because you're mean all the time, or because you don't talk to people, it's just because you're fat. That's the only reason. Everything else is super negotiable. And I know that making fat person jokes when you used to be fat is the comedy equivalent of saying that you have black friends, but I used to be fat. So earlier this year, I had to kiss somebody for the first time in like 3 years. Used to be fat. And it turns out, while you're going in for that kiss, you think to yourself a lot of thoughts. A lot of thoughts race very quickly through your brain. And chief among them is, I'm going to remember how to do this. This is going to be just like riding a bicycle. And then your lips meet, and you realize that it's not like riding a bicycle, and then you don't get a second date with that girl. And then a month later, you've been dwelling on that, you've been thinking about how this whole time you thought kissing would just be like riding a bicycle with your mouth, but you realize that you got to make a lot of adjustments in your life, and you start trying to ride a bicycle again to keep that weight off so that maybe you can get a second date in the future. And moments into riding a bicycle, you realize riding a bicycle is not like riding a bicycle. It's a lot like kissing somebody, but with your feet. I didn't plan for this show that much. I worked 8 hours, I finished working at 7, and then I ran over here. I feel like I'm drinking too much seltzer, and you guys are looking at me weird, but I'm so thirsty. I'm so thirsty. And I've been doing different things in my life this year. I eventually got second dates with people. I don't know if that was intended as condescending, but I want you to know I read it as condescending. So I was having sex with a person. And afterwards, she said, "You know, this is maybe a weird thing to say, but you've actually got kind of a big dick." You're right, that's a weird thing to say. Because I'd never heard someone qualify that kind of sentence before. And it was a level of seemingly honest behavior that I wasn't expecting from that. Because you know if someone says you have a big dick, that it means you have a small dick, because they wouldn't say it if you had a big dick, right? But I don't know what kind of means. So I was really, I internalized that in a weird way, and I was talking to a close friend of mine about it. And I said, yeah, this girl said I had kind of a big dick. I thought that was weird. And my friend said, that is really weird. And I said, yeah, because why would you qualify that sentence, right? My friend said, no, oh. That's not why I thought that was weird. And I said, what? They said, we've been friends for several years at this point. They said, I thought that was weird because the whole time I've known you, really just from like the first introduction, I've assumed you had like an abnormally small and misshapen penis. And I said, what? And they said, just, you know, no one with even normal genitals would carry themselves like you do. I've seen you in your personal life, I've seen you on stage. Nobody with even the normal amount of confidence in their body would possibly act like that. That's probably the least flattering thing anyone's ever said about me. But also maybe the most accurate. I hurt my back really badly 2 weeks ago, but I was really committed to opening this show with a pratfall. I'm starting to realize that may have been an error on my part. If anyone knows a good masseuse, talk to me. Not right now. I'm a little busy at the moment. And not right after me, because there's another guy, and that'd be rude. But like, after the show. Probably the worst thing that happened to me this year, including the time that a man called me the N-word. We're going to get to that later. But probably the worst thing that happened to me this year was I was at a party. I had hosted a big comedy show, and I was at a party. It was an after party for the show. A man who I didn't know with a mustache, red flag right there. A man that I didn't know with a mustache walked up to me and said, "You're that guy from that show." I was like, "Yeah, this is that party, that show." He said, "You're trying to collect unusual life experiences." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. That was the 15-minute closer for that show. I'm glad you could remember it for about 20 minutes. That's sick. I'm so happy for you." And then he said, "Do you want to see a photograph on my phone of my girlfriend's new labia piercing?" And I said, "What?" And then he showed me a photograph. Can you guess what it was of?
His girlfriend's new labia piercing.
You got it!
Yeah.
And also, I got someone else to say that. uncomfortable saying the word labia more than once in an act, and I just noticed that I didn't again. So based off of that experience, I think it's incredibly important that we as a society all get on board with reintroducing sex negativity. Sex positivity was a cute idea, and I was on board for it too. We all were. Because it's like, you should be able to have sex with people and feel good about it. That's cool. That's why you do that, right? But what happened with the sex positivity movement is that everyone still called girls sluts all the time, and dudes with mustaches thought it was okay to act way worse than they used to. And it made you like a fake liberal, a fake progressive, if you called them out on their bad behavior, because you were being sex negative. Hell yeah, I'm being sex negative. You're gross. I was in an STD clinic earlier this year. I don't have AIDS, just really bad anxiety. And I'm responsible. You should get tested, you know? And there was this guy who walked out, and he had his sleeve all rolled up. And you could see he had a bandage right here from where a nurse had just drawn blood, you know, to see if he had AIDS. And he walked out into the lobby. He sat next to this girl. And he said, You wanna grab some food after this? And that really upset me. That shook me to my core, to be quite honest. And I was thinking about it for a really, really long time. Why? Oh, why? That's the worst place to pick up chicks, right? And I realized that I wasn't thinking the right way about it. That's the only room on earth where you know that everyone else there has irresponsible sex with people they don't know that well. That's probably the best place to pick up chicks. If you also really like to gamble. As of yesterday, I no longer live with a white supremacist, but it was a hairy couple of months. I didn't pick my white supremacist roommate by choice. It wasn't something I intended to do. It wasn't something I meant to do. It's just something that happened to me. But my Craigslist roommate turned out to be a white supremacist. And it sneaks up on you. You don't want to just assume that about a person, or at least I didn't. So like, you know, when I knocked on his door at 3 a.m. to tell him to turn his music down because I had work at 8 a.m., and he opened the door and called me the N-word and closed the door, I thought maybe he's just a guy who doesn't know what words mean. Who you use them with? Because like, so I wasn't super sold on the white supremacy train just yet. But then during the first presidential debate, he yelled at his television really loudly, loud enough that I could hear it from a separate room in the house, "Fuck Black Lives." And I was like, oh, this guy's got some sketchy politics. I don't know if I agree with him on a lot of issues that I'd like to agree with someone that I have to share a kitchen with. The first day after Trump won the election, I had to clean up a white supremacist's vomit. That's the first thing I did. Almost wet there. Wonder how that got there. You learn a lot about yourself when you live with a white supremacist. You learn a lot about white supremacy as a movement, because you think that those are all like inhuman monsters, which is true, but what's way scarier is that they're just regular human monsters. So like, he would get blackout drunk a lot and play music really loudly, loud enough that I could hear it from my room, which was a separate room. And I would usually put on earplugs and then also put on headphones over the earplugs to try to cancel it out, which I think has been bad for my hearing overall. But usually little bits and pieces of whatever he was listening to would still get in there. They'd still wiggle their way in. So one time, I heard him singing along really passionately. And I was like, is that? Huh. I took off the headphones. And I took off the earplugs. And I went to my door. And he was singing along to Smash Mouth's All Star. I thought that was pretty funny. So I decided to keep all the hearing stuff out and listen for a while longer still. Then the next song came on, and it was Smash Mouth again, this time covering the Monkees' I'm a Believer. And I sat there, and I was like, huh. And he kept singing along really passionately to each song, and I kept Googling lyrics and snippets of each song to go like, is this? And I realized that he was singing along track by track to every single song from the Shrek's original. And I realized something that day about racists. They've got layers. Like an onion. It is a great pleasure of mine to get to intro this next comic. And I asked him what he wanted me to intro him with, and he said, well, you used to intro me with this one story, but we decided to retire that. And I was like, that's true. I wanted to intro with this story. And he said, my godparents will be in the audience. You can't intro me with that story. And I said, as I alluded to earlier, I am a man who has a college degree from this very university. And the day before, I had to get on my cap and gown and walk to campus to get my degree, proving that I did it. I got a text from a man that said, hey, we're drinking champagne tonight. I said, cool. I showed up at a man's house, and I drank at least one bottle of champagne. But I know I brought 3 to the party. I know that I didn't leave with any. So I don't know quite where it ended up, but somewhere in that range. And I remember at some point in this party talking to this man and saying, sir, this is like the last night of us in college together. And he said, I have to do another semester. And I said, fuck you. This is our last night in college together. He said, yeah. And then I was like, put that cigarette out on my ass right now. And he said, what? I said, you have to do it. And then the next morning, when I was throwing up in my bathroom, without a great memory of how I got back home, I felt a pain. I turned around and I looked in the mirror. And I know I asked about 1 cigarette, but I woke up with 2 cigarette burns on my right ass cheek that are still scarred there to this day. Left there by Mr. Erik Beringer. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Erik Beringer.
There's a lot more people here than I thought there was going to be. We made the show free because we didn't think that anyone would come if it was for money. And I still think that that's true. But we thought fewer people would come, even if it's free. And now I'm nervous. I guess. How's everybody doing? Thank you for coming. You're welcome. Apparently I'm strange. That's what I was told recently. Some laughs that I recognize. That's, I think it's from Catholic school. I think that's what did it. Makes you weird. I acted out a lot. I think I had a friend in Catholic school named Joey Gallaudetti. He was a child of divorce. And I remember the day that Joey's parents got divorced, because it was the same day that I went into the bathroom and he was there. And he said, "Eric, look, I'm gonna pee in both urinals at the same time." And then he dropped his pants and stood in between the two urinals and peed in neither urinal. I think palling around with him definitely led to me acting out. We had to go to chapel once a week. In the chapel, it was a big campus, and they would march us all single file in our little red sweaters, say St. Edward's Epiphany, march us to the chapel. And I didn't want to go to chapel. I didn't want to do whatever the fuck it was we were doing before the chapel, but I also didn't want to stop doing it to go to the chapel. And so I decided to, in a moment of protest, we were walking by the baptismal font, and I dipped my hand in the water. I made eye contact with one of the teachers, and I drank it. And she said, "Don't do that." And I said, "Why? 'Cause it's holy?" And she said, "No, 'cause it's dirty. We washed a baby in it today." You don't want to go to church so bad you'd rather drink a baby's bathwater. Bored of my life. I just lose interest in the things that are happening to me. Being alive is boring. It's just like, not for everybody. Some people like climb mountains and shit. But for like the rest of us, it's just like you can't decide what to eat. So you settle on Panera. And you do that for like 70 years. So then I don't know, and the Red Cross comes and flips you over and scoops out all the good shit. And you just kind of, I don't know, like people make a Facebook post about you. Some people do things to try and make their lives less boring. I did that, and when I was little, I got a hamster. This is my second hamster. My first hamster was good. His name was Fidget. But he was old and fat and quiet. Then I got Nibbles. And he was a dick. He bit me every day. And I was cleaning up his shit. He didn't make my life more interesting. Except one time, I put him in the drain pipe in our house, in front of the house. And he climbed up in it. I still don't know why I did that. But I ran inside and I told my dad, and I said, Dad, Fidget's in the drain pipe. And he was like, what? And I was like, I know. It was a good idea, it turns out. Because I'm being willing to bet that I'm the only person in this room that has ever had to watch their father try to shake a hamster out of the drain. It's just me. Been trying to better myself lately. I have this suit. So that's good. I wanna start doing things. I now only drink on weekends and special occasions. And I was raised Catholic, so every day's a feast day. I decided that when people loan me books, I'm gonna read them and return them instead of just saying, no, I haven't gotten into it, until they move away. I started exercising and eating better. I want to get handsome enough that I don't have to do this anymore. Because handsome people don't have to develop senses of humor. Let's just smile. If I was more handsome, I wouldn't have had to write any jokes. I'd just smile. Apple juice is dehydrating me. When I was younger, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was very scary. It's made worse by my parents' inability to time telling people bad news well. They didn't tell us on Christmas, but it was enough on Christmas, but that now whenever I think of Christmas, I think of cancer. And vice versa. You learn a lot about what not to do by watching what other people do to you. I learned to watch movies before I give them as gifts. A lot of copies of Steel Magnolias. If you laughed, you've either seen Steel Magnolias or you at least understand from the context of the joke that it is inappropriate present. I learned that nobody wants your fucking casseroles when they're sick. I was 12. I think my sisters were both teenagers. And for months, Dad was in charge. So every time you brought a casserole over to my house, you weren't helping anybody, you were fucking up a pizza night. And they said she wasn't going to die. And she didn't. She's here. But that's not a very comforting thing to hear for someone like me who knows, I've seen enough movies about World War II to know that doctors and friends will look at you and tell you you're not going to die just so you don't give them a letter that they have to deal with. Was in a car accident recently on 66. It was wet, and the car in front of the car in front of me stopped. And then the car in front of me stopped. And then my car entered the car in front of me via the trunk. This really tiny Floridian came out, and he's really nice. His name is Roy. And everybody was fine. We were a little shook up. I sustained the only injury I had. When I hit the car, I popped up in my seat and cut my forehead on a little medallion with the patron saint of protection. My mother had insisted I keep on the car. I come out of the car, this blood-soaked talisman in my hand, apologizing to everybody profusely. And then I learned another thing that I'm going to hold with me for a while. If you hit someone's car with your car, they're going to act like they're not mad at you. But they are mad at you. And they don't think that story about cutting your head is funny on the side of 66 while they're trying to get their kids to stop crying. The worst part about that entire event, I think, was that I was on my way to a graduation party, and I had made caprese salad skewers, little balls of mozzarella and grape tomatoes dressed in a balsamic glaze. And I hadn't wrapped the container very tightly. And it just sort of all over the champagne. And I had to get picked up by a tow truck driver who was nice enough to let me go into the car and grab my things right before we went into the tow yard. And all I had was 2 bottles of champagne and an extra pair of underwear. So he knew I was in for a good night. The underwear did have a little bit of balsamic glaze, but they were still usable. recently exited a long-term relationship. Well, I was escorted out. Whenever you tell people that you recently exited a long-term relationship, they always say, "But I thought you guys were happy." So did we. That's why we did it now instead of 1, 2, or 3 years ago. It's like when people look at pictures and go, "You guys look so happy in these pictures." You know that they ask you to smile before they Nobody's ever said, 1, 2, 3, look how you feel. Which is good because it takes me longer than 3 seconds to process how I feel. Clown slave is a term I coined. Thank you. Since the breakup, I've been acting out in public a lot. To pass the time. You can only eat at Panera so many times. I like to go to Trader Joe's with my roommate and stand in front of the pet food section and loudly say, "I just can't decide what brand of cat food to buy for our adult son." Here's one that's good if you want to try it. It's really fun. Go someplace where they're giving out samples and get in line and try whatever they're sampling out and then make a face and throw it away without finishing it and watch their line disperse. Whoops. My personal favorite is when I'm walking through tight spaces and there's somebody coming towards me. And you do that thing where you can't. You know when you just can't? You just can't. You know? Do you know when you just can't? When you just can't. I like to anticipate the direction that they're going to try to go. Head them off. And apologize the whole time. Wow. We're dancing now. Sorry. Oh my goodness. And you'll see in their eyes, there's a moment where they think, is this fucking guy doing this on purpose? And then they dismiss it because that's insane. No one would ever do that. People have jobs and shit. Well, I only work Tuesdays and Thursdays and alternate Saturdays. I can go to Trader Joe's whenever I want. And I never buy anything. Trying to get in better shape. Do push-ups now. I don't care for push-ups. But I think getting in shape could be a dangerous thing for me. Because being out of shape is probably one of the only things keeping me from killing myself. I'm just not comfortable with anyone finding this body. could have John come and lay me out in a flattering, less foldy way. But I don't want to be a burden. I do think about that sometimes. Not because I'm depressed. Does anybody else ever just wake up in the morning and think about all the shit that they're supposed to do that day? And then there's just part of them that's like, or. I mean, we don't have to just dismiss it. The option is on the table. And it's loaded. I decided I'm going to do what I want. I'm not gonna make sure that I'm not making eye contact with someone before I lick my lips. I'm just gonna do it. I'm doing it for me, but if they're gonna put that on themselves, then I'm not gonna cater to you. And I'm gonna fall asleep in more places when I'm supposed to be awake. And I'm gonna do fucking push-ups. I tried to strategically shave for this show. I wanted to shave at a point where my facial hair would grow back in such a way that it was there, but slight enough that it implies that I can grow a beard. Because after a couple days, I start getting ID'd at the ABC store when I let my facial hair grow back too much. I think that I'm just a bunch of toddlers in a worn suit stacked up on top of each other. Or just one toddler in a worn suit. And I'm enormous. With ape hands. I don't know. I'm glad I had them get me this chair. Just have a place to sit while I decide whether or not I'm going to end the show. Because, I mean, in that scenario, while I am the one being rude, most people are so bound by the social contract that it'd probably be a couple days before anybody left. I just feel like that is true. Because there's no intermission. Intermission is probably one of the worst inventions in the history of live theater. It's just a perfect invitation to leave. And just not ever go see a play again. You know, we tried it, and it just, you know, it was fine. I think I'm only doing this because when I'm done, I get to celebrate by drinking champagne. Should have made it shorter. John, we should have made it shorter. else ever feel like, this is something that I think is more specifically marketed towards young adults, but it might be possible that some older people feel this way. You ever feel like you fucked up your own life so bad that you just want to be around any grown-up? Just maybe they know, or they'll like give you some soup or something. You're sort of standing there. It's like the kid who wasn't supposed to play with the bow and arrow, and then they did anyway, and they shoot themselves in the foot. And then they make someone go get their mom, even though she's the one that fucking said not to play with it. She already tried to help. Why does she have to be the one that handles this? You handle it. I already did that. Go get my mom. No. She's busy. She's making lunch. She's gonna leave it on the porch. She doesn't want you tracking blood in the house. That's how I feel. I feel like you guys are afraid of me. And I like it. It's good. I feel powerful. I feel like I could just do a really long thing of not saying anything. You guys would laugh. All right. I have a beer belly from drinking beer. And I have pajama pants. Sometimes I like to pull my up over my beer belly, and then I put my hands down in the pajama pants and I hold my beer belly like a stack of mail. And I like to pretend that it was delivered to me by accident. It's actually my neighbor's mail. And I get to go over to her house and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think this is yours." And they brought it to me by mistake. But they didn't. I brought it to me by mistake. Thank you, guys.